Life just couldn't seem to get this evolution thing right. Did it start on land or the sea? And just how many times did it cross over from land to sea? And why should we believe this fishy fishapod story? This is Genesis Week. And welcome to this episode of Genesis Week, the weekly program of creationary commentary on news, views, and events pertaining to the Origins controversy, proudly brought to you by core Ottawa citizens for Origins research and education, and exclusive right here on YouTube, showing the glory of God and creation and broadcasting from our secret underground lair rented from the now retired Batman. We bring you the information the anti-creationists don't want you to see or hear. One of the most talked about shows, Science and Technology, on YouTube. You can find us at wazulu.com or genesisweek.com, or click the ever so convenient subscribe link up top. And don't forget, you can peruse other episodes by following the links in the upper corners of each episode. I'm your host, Ian Juby. Today we're going to cover a composite of several news items from the past week. The first article, loaded with a lot of evolutionary assumptions and written by Mulkadagian et al., appeared in PNAS. Citing the problems of life arising in the oceans, as well as the contrast of the chemical composition of what is believed to be the first life with the chemical content in the water of hot springs on land. Their conclusion? The first life must have started in hot springs on land and not the ocean. Now, there are a few problematic facts here. No one was there at the beginning to get a sample of this first life, so the organisms of which they are comparing the chemical composition are assumed to have been the first life. Such assumptions are also ignoring the glaring issues of chemicals assembling into life in direct violation of scientific and natural laws. Then there are the other evolutionary scientists who claim that land was inhospitable for life 3.8 billion years ago due to meteor bombardment. Therefore, life had to have started in the oceans. A couple of weeks prior to the PNAS article, the South African Journal of Science carried a report by Brain et al. On what is claimed to be our earliest animal ancestor, a sponge, allegedly 760 million years old. This fossil sponge was found in limestone, which evolutionary geologists have deduced was deposited on the ocean floor. So obviously, this sponge lived in the ocean. Still yet another article of interest came out this past week in the Proceedings of the Royal Society by Vega and Wiens, who, using cladistic comparisons, concluded that the majority of saltwater fishes evolved from freshwater fish ancestors. Now, I'm going to ignore all of the evolutionary assumptions involved here, as cladistics do not prove nor disprove evolution. They are simply interpreted within the evolutionary paradigm, and evolution was simply assumed within the comparisons. But let's assume for the moment that they are correct in their conclusions. You'll also recall a couple of weeks back where I mentioned a British Museum of Natural History article talking about the venerable horseshoe crab. I pointed out how it hasn't changed in some 450 million years, according to the evolutionary timescale. Now, the British Museum article even pointed out that the horseshoe crab has remained unchanged, though it survived 3 of the Earth's major extinction events. Now, several people objected vociferously to my comments, citing the usual evolutionary mantra that change only occurs because of environmental pressures. The horseshoe crab saw no change in its environment, therefore it did not change. Really? Well, try to tell that to the trilobites, who are now apparently extinct, yet lived right alongside the horseshoe crab and in the same environment. Better yet, let's examine the coelacanth, which also lived in the ocean unchanged in some 407 million years, as it is still around today. Yet the coelacanth was considered part of the line of fishapod ancestors, the half-fish, half-tetrapod line. You know, the evolutionary descent where the fish grew legs and walked up on land to become land-dwelling creatures. So, did the coelacanth change, or didn't it? Did it experience environmental pressures to change, or didn't it? According to the evolution myth, once land creatures evolved, they got bored of the land, went back into the sea, evolving into sea creatures. Last fall, Motani delivered a paper at the Society for Vertebrate Paleontology showing how it appears that plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs evolved their way back into the seas from an unknown cold-blooded ancestor in tropical regions. Now, it's simply assumed that plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs were cold-blooded because nobody's actually checked the body temperature of a living plesiosaur or ichthyosaur. For some reason, cold-blooded marine reptiles, dolphins, whales, and 28 other groups of marine creatures all evolved back into ocean-dwelling creatures from land animals, according to the evolution myth. So, before we go any farther, let us line up all of these reports to paint an evolutionary picture thus far. I mean no offense to my evolutionary friends, but you need to see just how ridiculous the story has become. According to the latest and greatest evolutionary research, the first life arose in warm ponds or perhaps hot springs on land. This first life somehow survived the alleged heavy meteor bombardment of Earth. Perhaps this life was blasted out of the hot springs into the ocean. I don't know. I wasn't there. Neither were you. All we do know is that somehow this life wound up in the oceans and evolved into a sponge. That sponge allegedly evolved into a fish, which decided it preferred freshwater instead of saltwater and moved into the rivers, streams, and lakes of the continents. It diversified. Apparently, those fish got bored and went back out into the ocean, where after diversifying some more, got bored of the ocean, grew legs, walked up onto land. These land creatures diversified, and some of those land creatures got bored and decided they wanted to live in the oceans again. So they evolved into sea-dwelling creatures. 31 different times. 31 different groups of land creatures allegedly evolved into sea creatures. All this time, the horseshoe crab, sea pens, tadpole shrimp, bristleworms, limpets, sea lancelets, sea anemones, stromatolites, jellyfish, and fishes like the coelacanth didn't evolve whatsoever. In fact, the transition from fish to landlubber is an interesting tale which I've discussed on the show before. The coelacanth was considered to be the precursor to the tetrapod because of its 4 large lobed fins. Clearly a fish attempting to evolve legs and walk on land. Now, this was believed in spite of the fact that the coelacanth doesn't even have a spine. It has a notochord, which is like a rubber tube in place of a spine. The coelacanth vanishes from the fossil record at the end of what is called the Cretaceous, or about 65 million years, according to the evolutionary timescale. Assumed extinct, it was sensational to find them alive swimming off the coast of Africa in the 1930s. This is just as stunning as finding a stegosaurus nibbling on your garden vegetables. There it was, living in very deep water with absolutely no interest in walking on land. And if it was around unchanged, then that would mean it had nothing to do with fishapod evolution. However, evolutionists believe they had a pretty good fossil sequence of fish to tetrapod, a 4-legged amphibian. Now, ignoring the speculative nature of it, and there was a missing link, if you will, a gap in the sequence, right at the 375 million year mark. So, Neil Shubin from the U of Chicago took a team up to the Canadian High Arctic in 2004 to go looking for this missing link in 375 million year old rock. They found what they believed they were looking for: Tiktaalik. Tiktaalik was heralded as such a stunning discovery and victory for evolution. After all, evolution had actually made a prediction, and it was fulfilled. The anti-creation blog, the Sensuous Curmudgeon, went hog wild over Tiktaalik, saying in their August 10th, 2009 blog post, "The discovery of Tiktaalik illustrates and rebuts many of the fallacies of creationism. In fact, we think the story of Tiktaalik should be told every time you find yourself in a conversation with a creationist." Oh, I couldn't agree more. When creationists address the subject of transitional fossils, they are in full denial mode. This is because of their dogmatic insistence that one species can't evolve into the other. Well, actually, it's the scientific evidence that prohibits one species from evolving into another. But I digress. They referred to what they said in a previous July 7th post of the same year discussing the spectacular Tiktaalik find. Consider the discovery of Tiktaalik, the fossil of a transitional species midway between finned fish and four-footed land animals. It wasn't an accidental discovery. It was found by predicting that such a transition occurred approximately 363 million years ago, before which, according to the fossil record, there were no four-legged vertebrates living on land. Relying on geology, an appropriately aged and conveniently exposed rock stratum was located in the Canadian Arctic that had once been an ancient shoreline. That's where the search commenced. Are you following this? Testing a prediction based on both evolution and geology, the scientists searched for the fossil of a transitional creature that, according to the theory of evolution, must have once existed in a place and time like the one geologists said they were searching. After 5 years of effort, their search was spectacularly successful, simultaneously confirming the validity of both geology and evolution theory. Wow! Slam dunk, right? Not only did they have what sure looked like an impressive sequence of fossil transition from fish to tetrapod, they even made a prediction based on evolutionary theory and found a fishapod to fill in the gap. But neither geology nor evolutionary theory predicted what had already been discovered in 2002, before the discovery of Tiktaalik. Fossil tetrapod footprints in rocks dated by the evolutionary geologists as 395 million years old. Whoops. So, based on the evolutionary assumptions, tetrapods were obviously already around with fully formed legs, wrists, feet, toes, etc. before any of the fishapods that were allegedly trying to evolve legs, wrists, feet, and toes. Now, some have desperately tried to salvage Tiktaalik, saying, maybe the age is off a little bit. For example, the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Drumheller, Alberta, mysteriously has Tiktaalik's age listed as 400 million years old, even though everyone else lists its age as 375 million years old. Now, while there's a lot of women out there who would love to be able to change their age like that, changing Tiktaalik's age does not fix the problem. You can't change the date of Tiktaalik without abandoning the alleged predictions that evolution and geology made. You can't abandon the history. You can't change the date of Tiktaalik without changing the date of all the other fishapods. And if you were wrong on all of those dates, then where on earth are you getting these dates? Clearly, your dating and assembly of the fossils cannot be trusted. The Polish footprints didn't just throw Tiktaalik out of the evolutionary tree, it threw all of these fishapods out of the tree. The sensuous curmudgeon finished off their August 2009 post with the question, will the creationist to whom you explain this be convinced? Alas, probably not, but at least you'll know you gave it a good try. Well, now that the Poland fossil footprints have thoroughly destroyed all the predictions of evolution theory, and has completely falsified the fishy fishapod story, and simultaneously refuted the validity of both geology and evolution theory, will the anti-creationist to whom this is explained be convinced? Alas, probably not, but at least you'll know you gave it a good try. As I mentioned previously, and as you can see here today, the evolution myth will conform to whatever evidence you give it. Therefore, evolution is not falsifiable, therefore, it is not science. It is, as the Apostle Paul wrote, science, falsely so called. Evolution is a myth. Woohoo! Mail for me? I forget. I'm supposed to cut the blue wire or the red wire? Or I could just pull the detonator. I was so excited about Darwin's birthday last weekend that I accidentally got my dates mixed up and celebrated his birthday a day early. His birthday was Sunday, not Saturday, as I said in last week's show. Well done to those who caught this mistake and somehow think it discredits me when I get my days mixed up. Hey, at least I'm not off by 20 million years. I'd like to give a special shout out to Colin Jesus, who was sharing his testimony in the comments last week. Kudos. It takes courage to share like that, and also to YouTuber Pump Stations for sharing their story. I commend you both for your courage, and I'm sorry you had to put up with the typical YouTube trolls who selfishly butt in with incredible insensitivity. Wazulu, could you put the Ingalls original article online for us? Thanks. Well, let me see what I can do. There is copyright issues involved. I'm allowed to post it in some forms due to fair use, but would definitely need permission to post the whole article. I also apologize for the delay in getting the newsletter out. I wanted to add some more of the original photos, and I only got permission to reproduce them a couple of days ago. Thanks, Ian, for this video. Always enjoy a well-done creationist newsreel. Just a note, at 5:15, there was a spelling mistake on the reference. Wow, Ian, your coverage of the Brian HF was just spectacular. Keep up the good work. Not only does it makes a quick ponage of Darwinism, but also reveals the vicious language of some of the anti-creationists. I love it when people are like, Juby, you're so smart. I love your videos. You're always right and explain everything so clear. Then they do not even research what he is saying. If they would only do some simple research, they would find out that he is FOS. Think, people. Use your brain. Don't just listen to him and say, wow, he makes sense. He only makes sense to you because you like to believe everything you hear. You have the net, invented by scientists, at your fingertips. Use it. Actually, I agree. Don't take my word for anything. Do your own research. In fact, research the claims of what others like Band of Atheists say, so you can see where they are lying and misleading people. I'm ready, willing, and able to back up my claims and my commentary. You can verify the facts for yourself. By the way, if you're going to use the internet, trueorigin.org, creationwiki.org, great resources for those who want to do further research on the creation-evolution debate. Concerning viruses, it is true that they cannot function without a cell. However, not every virus is detrimental to cells. We now know that we have viruses in our intestines which are not only benign, but beneficial to our symbiotic bacteria. Their DNA helps to fine-tune the bacterium's metabolism, consequently optimizing ours. I believe this was the original function of viruses. Of course, I have a little bit of a soft spot for the little guys. Keep up the good work. Credentials are not important? Then why did you, Mr. Juby, falsely claim to be a professor at one point in your illustrious career? By your reckoning, hypocrisy and bigotry disqualifies you from the so-called debate. So by your own words, you are disqualified. I have never, ever claimed to be a professor. Ever. You are misconstruing a nickname that some people call me by. Professor Juby, Dr. Juby, and Doc Juby. Nicknames that were given to me by another teacher at the high school I taught at 17 years ago. Students from that school, friends, and even the vice principal still call me Doc Juby to this day. Sorry, but someone else giving me an affectionate or respectful nickname does not make me a liar. I don't know if you're being deliberately deceptive regarding the Denisova sequence work or not understanding the methods used. Tens of millions of fragments of DNA were recovered and sequenced, not a single complete DNA molecule as you claim. Overlapping nucleotide sequences enable reconstruction and a likelihood estimate used to determine the confidence at each cross-comparison. In total, from fragments, 1.9 complete copies of the genome were independently constructed and compared. Thank you for the clarification. If you recall, however, as Dr. Criswell explained, kinetic calculations predict that amplifiable fragments less than 400 base pairs will survive no longer than 10,000 years at temperate conditions. So the point remains the same. The comments always take a fascinating rabbit trail, as this week several YouTubers got into debating genetics. T. Chapman 500 quoted and responded to the Science Foundation, quote, "This demonstrates a horrific misunderstanding of genetics on your part. Mutations aren't correct because evolution is not directional," end quote. Wrong! The theory of evolution, abbreviated evolution, turns rocks into people in billions of years. This requires, once you have life, specific genetic mutations to occur. These specific mutations do not occur. Everything but those types of mutations occur, e.g. benefit with cost. Damaged information is not new information. Let's look at the word information. If I take away mation, all you have is infor. Now, how is infor new information? It was already there to begin with. Mutations damage information, so all you end up with is the same information, just with parts of it missing. You do not understand natural selection. If you did, you would understand the fact that creatures don't evolve by chance. Natural selection can only take place on the mutations that happened by chance. There is no direction of the mutations. You either have design or chance. Which one do you choose? Evolution is completely dependent on chance mutations. There is no getting away from the fact that chance is an integral part of evolution, hence the need for over a long period of time, which is simply speculation and not science. And as I point out in my natural selection rant, natural selection doesn't work the way evolution needs it to. Now, I've decided to leave the ratings turned on for the whining anti-creationists. I discovered that, much to their dismay, ratings really do not affect the viewership. At all. So, there you go. Rate and rant away. Thanks to all who gave input on that matter of the ratings. Well, that's enough for this week. I'm your host, Ian Juby. I hope you'll join me again next Thursday for the next episode of Genesis Week, and hopefully I'll finally get caught up and get some more videos out here shortly. So, make sure you subscribe up top, and remember those famous words of warning by the Lord Jesus Christ, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but through me.
Production software was provided for Genesis Week by the Big Valley Creation Science Museum, located just 25 minutes north of Drumheller, Alberta, in the heart of Dinosaur Badlands. The Big Valley Creation Science Museum was built from the ground up to give credit to our Creator, portraying the scientific evidence showing that creation is the faith that fits the facts, and evolution is the faith that the facts have failed. Visit bvcsm.com for more details.